welcome to episode 5 of the weekly Puck Off, brought to you by Boudreasy and Colt 45. You ventured into an area where two men know lots about puck, and 100% of the producers are crack addicts. Woo, here we go. Episode 5.
Hey, everybody.
And of course, when I say 100% of the producers, I'm referring to our one and only producer, who we refer to as the illustrious Coach Connor. He's actually not with us today, so we're going to make lots of jokes at his expense.
Right, he's coming off a 3-day crack bender, and so regrettably he couldn't be here. And, well, I was going to say we couldn't make fun of his hair, but of course we can still make fun of his hair.
Because he still hasn't gone for that haircut that we talked about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's getting a little spiky.
It's turning back into the shark fin that he usually carries around with him.
This is our Halloween edition.
I better stop the music here. The Halloween edition. I didn't even realize that.
Of Weekly Puck Off. We are here to scare you.
Scare you with our vast knowledge and expertise of the NHL.
Yes.
Scary, perhaps as... I don't know what I was going to say. Perhaps as scary as the limited number of shots that Buffalo got on Toronto last night.
Wow, that was frightening. I was going to go with...
a lopsided game.
With Subban and his... Michael Jackson Thriller costume.
Jeez, yeah.
That was he looked just like
it was pretty
MJ.
good. Pretty good.
Very well done.
And we're not just saying that because of his African Canadian descent. It's more so he actually looked exactly like Michael Jackson in the Thriller video.
Yeah,
I looked at a side-by-side comparison on Google Images, and it was striking, the comparison between the two of them.
It was like something from like a wax museum had come to life or something. Very well put together costume. So let's hear it for PK. Love that, PK.
Unlike this podcast, it was very well put together.
We are here to frighten you. Should we talk about Halloween stories now, or do you want to do that a little later on? Because I have a Halloween story that I'd like to share if we have time. Maybe let's see if we have time.
All right, whatever works. I was going to say go for it, but...
Well, it involves a certain substance that I had consumed that evening, and I was at a costume party. But maybe let's wait for a little while longer.
Okay, yeah, we'll make sure we have time.
All right.
Just to keep all the listeners on the edge of their seats.
That's right.
And as a little prelude to this, does that make sense? Prelude to the podcast?
I like that word.
As a little prelude, I just want to apologize in advance for any voice cracks and sniffles and nose blowing you might hear, because I do have a sinus infection and a bit of a sore throat at the moment. So just because I love all of our listeners so much, all 9 of them, I really didn't want to leave them hanging, waiting an extra couple days for this pod. So I'm going to battle through it. And on that note, let's get into a little bit about last night's games.
Wow, Colt, that was inspirational. For my part, I am sans Red Bull today. So there's that.
Myself, I'm currently on 1 amp and a large coffee because my throat needed some soothing. I had already had an amp, so I was like, you know what, I'm having a coffee.
Well, you must have been up late last night watching the several games that were being contested in the NHL last night. A lot going on.
Yeah, I watched a few of them. Yeah, I don't know. Where do we start?
Well, Pittsburgh's 8-3 embarrassment over New Jersey. That was really something. New Jersey led 3-1 at one point, and then Pittsburgh lights them up to the tune of 7 straight unanswered goals to win 8-3.
Yeah.
Schneider gets chased. That Pittsburgh power play is something else. 40.6% efficiency now. It leads the league by far. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have New Jersey, the worst penalty kill in the league at 66.7%, which my sources tell me equates to 1/3.
That is almost exactly 1/3, in fact. I don't know how many decimal places that goes to, but it sounds pretty damn close to 1/3. And while we are dealing with a bit of a small sample size this early in the year, we're looking at 10 games.
Yes.
And to be able to sustain a 40% power play over 10 games is pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. But for people that thought at the beginning of this season that Pittsburgh was looking a little thin on the 3rd and 4th lines, maybe not the case. Here's some guys that step up, like Olli Mata, their defenseman, who is going to be having surgery soon to remove that neck tumor. But he's expected to make a full recovery. He'll be out for a couple of weeks while he has surgery. But he has looked impressive. And just basically anyone that they put with Malkin seems to be doing well. Like Blake Comeau is fantasy relevant all of a sudden. Because he's on that second line. He has 6 points.
It's almost like if you play for the Penguins, you automatically get 10 more points than you would on any other team. And perhaps more if you play with Crosby. Look at Hornquist. But even with that one line being absolutely stacked with Hornquist and Kunitz, Crosby only had 2 points last night.
Only 2.
So there was a lot of contribution from the whole team. It wasn't just Crosby's line getting 5 of the 8 goals.
It was a well-balanced attack, and the coaching change there seems to have really invigorated that team.
Yeah.
Different playing styles, attacking, to carrying the puck in a lot more, playing to their strengths. They stay healthy.
Yeah, watch out. As usual, they're a contender, and they look great in the regular season. It'll be interesting to see how they hold up as the season progresses.
Absolutely.
Showing no signs of any downside. Moving on. Showing no signs of slowing anytime soon.
Colt 45 is a little under the weather today. We are here to frighten.
We can edit this, right?
We absolutely can. Tough loss for the Islanders last night. 4-3 at home to Winnipeg. That surprised me. If the Islanders are going to make the playoffs this year, one would think that would be the type of game that they would have to win, beating the teams like Winnipeg. But not so much, and I don't know what is going on with their goaltending. The Islanders.
Yeah, and Winnipeg is actually, I believe as of last night, they were tied with Colorado for bottom in the West, if I'm not mistaken.
Right down near the bottom, yeah.
And to lose to a team like that, it concerns me a bit. I know the Islanders got off to a hot start. I almost wonder if their defense has not improved that as much as we thought it did with Leddy and Boychuk. But again, a lot of those issues can be attributed to the weak goaltending they've been seeing.
A couple of the goals that Halak let in last night were of the soft variety. And
yeah, absolutely.
Last week, Chad Johnson, their backup, started back-to-back games because Halak had such a shaky start to the season, and the hope was that would sort of shake him out of his funk, so to speak, but evidently not. Chad Johnson, 89% save percentage. That's what Halak had coming into last night. I'm not sure what his save percentage is now, but it would obviously be worse. And yeah, it's an issue. If this continues, what are the Islanders going to do? Do they go out and perhaps try to sign a Thomas Vokoun or perhaps even a Brodeur? Because they have a little bit of cap space there. They may have to do something.
Yeah, it might be something to look at. I mean, give the guys a few more games to work with. It's still, again, it's a small sample size this early in the year, and Halak has proven that he can be a starter in the past.
Definitely.
So I think they need to give him a little bit more time before they start jumping around looking for new guys.
Yes.
But while we're on the topic of goalies, I just wanted to quickly mention we had a listener comment on the podcast. So
Ooh.
Shout out to our friend Jordan. He sent off an email and just wanted to chime in. We were having that goalie discussion last week about the top paid goalies and how Fleury might not be comparable to that top tier anymore.
I remember that. That was invigorating.
Yeah, very invigorating. And he also agreed with that. He thought it was by far the best podcast he'd ever heard. From us anyway. It was our best.
The best he'd ever heard. Was he on crack? Or?
Yeah, he was hanging out with producer Connor a little bit that day. But yeah, he just wanted to chime in and say, we didn't mention that Lundqvist had gotten a raise to $8.5 million a year, and he's now the highest paid goalie. We were talking about last year's salaries, but it is relevant to mention that Lundqvist is now the highest paid goaltender.
And worth every penny because his numbers so far this year have not been great. But he is traditionally a slow starter, so look for his save percentage, his goals against average, his wins, hopefully for New York, to escalate as the year goes on, and by the end of the season, be damn near unbeatable. Game of the night last night, obviously, was Chicago and Anaheim. Anaheim wins 1-0. They were outshot 38-25. What's your takeaway from that, Cole?
Well, I'd like to just mention that it was not the Getzlaf-Perry line that scored the winning goal. The lone goal in the game was scored by Devontae Smith-Pelly.
Yes.
And it was a shorthanded goal.
That's very true.
Very nice play, great deke. It was one of those games where Gibson just stood on his head, kept the team in the game, and then they were able to pull through late. And while Darling, the Chicago third stringer, played exceptionally well also.
What a story that is.
He only let in one goal. You can't fault the kid. He's playing great.
He's let in how many goals now since he started? That's 2 games in a row.
Two goals in total.
2 goals in 2 games.
His first game he beat Ottawa 2-1.
I wonder
and stopped 38 shots in that game, or 30-something shots. Quite a few shots. Many shots.
Several shots.
Tens
Several
of
shots taken.
He stopped tens of shots, and he hasn't lost yet. Anyway, yeah.
Well, he lost last night, but you can hardly blame it on.
Oh yeah, sorry.
On
yes,
Darling.
Sorry.
They lose 1-0.
Yeah,
You obviously don't take that
exceptional
on
play from
goaltender.
Darling.
Is he making a case for himself being Chicago's new backup?
I think he has to join the conversation anyway. He's played every bit as well as Ronta. If Crawford comes back soon, I think Darling goes back to the minors for a bit. 2 starts is a little bit quick to relegate Ronta back to the minors, as well as he played for Chicago last year while Crawford was down.
Yes.
But it's definitely great that they know they have an option they can turn to when Crawford does get hurt like this.
Darling looked good in training camp and preseason as well. So if Ranta should stumble, you're right. I think they know who their new backup is going to be. And he's really making a name for himself. So maybe there's another team out there that needs a backup.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of Tokarski emerging last year in the playoffs for Montreal.
Very much so.
Kind of jumping from third stringer to starter for a little while, and he played great for them. Just what was I saying about Gibson? Right.
38 save shutout.
When he got sent to the minors, I warned everybody, don't drop him. He's going to be coming back up, and he'll be the number 1 before you know it, or at least be sharing time with Anderson. Lo and behold, not 2 weeks later, he's back up. He's back up to the NHL. He gets a shutout in his first start back after a couple week ones by Anderson.
That's right.
Look for him to take over or at least share time, as I said before.
At least share time, and so now it becomes a competition. Who's going to get that starting role during the second half of the season, perhaps? Pretty much neck and neck, I think you'd have to say right now, between Anderson and Gibson. Probably a bit of an inside track to Anderson, because certainly Anderson has not stumbled, Frederick Anderson, at all yet.
Proven.
And the one luxury you have as a goaltender playing for Anaheim is that defense of theirs. So solid. They lose Ben Lovejoy to injury. I don't think they're going to miss him that much. They're so deep on defense. So
yeah, and with those 2 guys, it's a good problem to have, trying to choose who your starter is between Anderson and Gibson, who are probably 2 of the better goalies in the league at this point.
Statistically, yes.
Yeah, again, that could be a little bit influenced by Anaheim's great defense, and I'm sure it is. But I really think Gibson's the real deal. I think, but within the next 2 to 3 years, he'll be one of the top 5 goalies in the NHL.
Well, remember what he did in the playoffs last year in Game 7, where Anaheim was eliminated it was LA that took them out last year, as I recall.
I can't remember.
Here's one for
was
the
it
editor.
Chicago? Did Anaheim make it to round 2? I'm blanking.
They did make it to the second round.
Then LA must have beat them in round 2.
And yeah, LA took them out because Chicago took out Minnesota last year. So yes, it definitely was LA. The point is, Game 7, he had a bit of a meltdown, but up until then, the games that he had played, he looked very solid. And
very dependable.
Just a 21-year-old at this point, I believe. So yeah, goaltender of the future for Anaheim, no doubt. Of course, we were both happy because your Senators looked impressive in beating an admittedly Bobrovsky-less Columbus Blue Jackets 5-2.
And Leonard looked great as, I guess, Ottawa's perceived backup. He's been sharing time with Anderson, but Leonard hasn't lost in regulation yet. He's 3-0-1.
Ottawa looking so solid in the goaltending department this year. So important for them. So with it, their prospects go up as well. And Ottawa now 5-2-1, are they?
5-2-1, yep.
Excellent.
We'll get back to these guys a little later, I guess, in the pod.
Some of the Canadian teams that have been surprising. Vancouver beats Carolina 4-1. Granted, a victory over Carolina is nothing to really get out into the streets and dance about, but it does get Vancouver to 6-3, which far exceeds my expectations.
Yeah, and those are the games they have to win, so you got to win them, and they did. So it just shows that they're having a good start. What are they, 6-3?
They're 6-3, and I think one thing that's encouraging for the Canucks, other than the play of their excellent top line, the Sedin, and Verbata line, which we can now call the 9-11 line, because they've all played 9 games and they all have 11 points. So for today, they're the 9-11 line.
Jeez.
They played well, and the play of Ryan Miller, if you're a Canuck fan like me, has got to be especially encouraging, because other than a couple of weak outings against Dallas, well, the 1 week outing was against Dallas, he's looked pretty solid, so that's good for them.
Yeah, and it's good to have a guy they can count on like that, like they used to do with Luongo prior to letting both of their good goalies go last year. I don't know. At least they got to replace him now, right?
That's right, and so looks good on Jim Benning, their new general manager, to get a quality goaltender like Ryan Miller, who a lot of teams wish they had right now, the Islanders included. Good comeback from Minnesota. It was good to see them regroup after their loss to the Rangers, where they surrendered 5 in the third period.
Yeah.
Now they're the team that get to make the comeback as they beat Boston 4-3, come back from 3-1 behind. Minnesota's playing well right now.
They're playing very well, and they're still looking like a contender in the West to potentially win the conference, which is something that I don't think we've ever been able to say about Minnesota, the Minnesota Wild anyway, since they joined the league.
This is the best that they've been, I think.
By far. They've had playoff teams before, but they were never really realistic threats to win the conference until now.
Never this deep, and there's Kemper leading the league with 3 shutouts. Had a bit of an off night against the Rangers, but Zach Parise, can't say enough about him. We talked on a previous podcast about the troubles with his father, unfortunately sick with lung cancer right now, and how it's probably a motivating factor. It looks so tough with those stitches.
Yeah.
You seen his face?
Yeah, right across the upper lip nose area.
Yeah, looking real tough. And then Toronto. So should we get into the Leafs here? Because they've been a real hot button topic here.
Here's the thing with Toronto. Good win last night, don't get me wrong. They beat Buffalo.
4-0.
4-0. Faced 10 shots. Bernier faced 10 shots.
No jerseys were thrown on the ice last night, so that's good.
Which is a step up for the Leafs at this point. I mean, maybe we can talk about some of the problems in Toronto. We could pretty well dedicate an entire podcast to it, but maybe we can just touch on it for a few minutes.
Let's briefly touch
insight
on the calamity that's been the Leafs so far this year. Yeah.
See, what I'm feeling with Toronto is I think the major reason, and there's obviously dozens of reasons that are contributing factors to any team's struggles or successes, and
not just Randy Carlyle, as some people seem to think.
You really can't put it all on the coach when you have a roster that's only one line deep. Goaltending that isn't always dependable. I mean, Bernier's pretty solid, but they're always good to have 1 or 2 games here and there where they just get lit up.
Bernier has been a real reflection of the team in general. Bernier is on my fantasy team, so I certainly have been following him. And, good game, bad game kind of thing. He's looked really good at times, and then other times he has not looked good, much like the team itself.
And, yeah, a lot of that has to do with how the team plays in front of him. Like, they're letting 40 shots in, or 40 shots on, well, other than Buffalo, they're letting consistently 40 shots against. He can only stop so many of those before he starts letting them in. And back to my point of what I think is the issue in Toronto is that they've been content with mediocrity for probably the past 10 years. Like, they're happy to just battle, maybe get into the playoffs. They're not ready to just rebuild, dump some of their good players, get some prospects, and hang on to those prospects. They switch guys. It seems like every year or two they're recycling their third and fourth line, and they just never develop guys and get better. They're consistently somewhere between 7th and 14th in the East, and that's not good enough for the fans. They want to see the team win, but at the same time, they're not ready to let the team rebuild because the media is so negative in Toronto. They won't let them get away with anything without having it all over the news that the team sucks, the coach sucks, the GM sucks.
And it just gets worse and worse. And the end of the season last year was terrible for them because they went from being a team that was going to make the playoffs, it looked, and then the complete slide at the end of the season. And the atmosphere there has been extremely negative ever since then. Fans booing at the end of every game that they lose, and there's a lot of negativity there right now. You're right.
Fans and media are just, Toronto's probably the toughest city to play in for the players as far as getting ridiculed by your own fans if you're not performing properly. But
you hear about it in the media, and I read a comment by Joffrey Miller, who basically after their last game that they lost, was it 5-2 to the Bruins or 4-1, whatever they lost by. It was not a good performance. It was 4-1. But they lost
4-1. Our viewer or our guest is waiting out just behind the glass here. He's signaling 4-1.
Here comes Tack.
Do we want to let him in now? Maybe he can join in the Toronto conversation for a couple minutes. There he is.
I've been let in.
Mr. Tack.
Tack is back for Tack Attack.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure to be here.
And just before we get back to the Toronto discussion here, I just wanted to point out Tack has been recognized by one of our listeners. They specifically, it was Jordan again. We only had one email from a listener. Let's not get too excited. But
to us, it seems like 10.
In that one email, not only did he mention that bit about Lundqvist, but he also mentioned how much he enjoyed the segment with Tack and the roundtable discussion that ensued when he joined. So we're happy to have him back for round 2 of Tack Attack.
Oh, shucks. Thanks, Jordan.
This prestigious recognition on the weekly puck off. You're the first person who's been on the pod, and already we have a listener commending your great work.
We've generated some good quality feedback here, so you should be proud.
Oh, I am proud, definitely.
Just to round out the comment about Lupul too, and he was talking about how he felt like he couldn't go out for dinner in public because for him to do that,
yes, I saw that.
He would hear it from the fans and be ridiculed, and so he had to eat at home. Which, I mean, can't feel a whole lot of sympathy for somebody who's making as much money for these guys, but it does reveal what the consensus of the public there right now in Toronto and how bad it is.
Absolutely, and I think his girlfriend or fiance, wife, whatever she is, was also getting some hate tweets from Leafs fans at some point. I think that was near the end of last year.
Some hate tweets. I get those all the time.
Anyway, just before we continue, there was originally when you were talking about the tweet from Lupul or the post from Lupul,
Yeah.
you accidentally said Joffrey Miller. So I just wanted to confirm that is indeed Joffrey Lupul and Steve Blewett.
I'm pretty sure I said Lupul.
I thought you said Miller. I was wondering if there was a different Joffrey Miller that I wasn't aware of, like a reporter in Toronto or something.
I'm still excited about Ryan Miller in the play of the Canucks. Maybe that's what it is.
He's-
Apologies, listeners.
Yeah, and that's Steve's
Joffrey
mispronunciation
Lupul.
of the week. One
Very
of
good.
probably several, so stay tuned for more.
Very good.
7-3 win for Tampa Bay. GM Steve Yzerman for the Lightning.
Steve
I
Azierman.
believe it's pronounced Azierman.
Steve Azierman.
So, Tack, what do you got for us today?
Well, you're mentioning Steve Azierman there, and Red Wings. Of course, I'm the Red Wings analyst. Have you had a chance to talk about Gordie Howe at all?
No.
We haven't brought him up, no.
Okay. Well, as the Red Wings analyst, I would like to. Well, of course, as the viewers or the listeners of this audio program probably already know, Gordie Howe suffered a stroke on Sunday, and currently he's got partial paralysis, and he's having trouble speaking. So we at the Weekly Puck Off would just like to send our best wishes to Gordie Howe on a speedy
Absolutely.
recovery.
Mr. Hockey. Gordie Howe.
Legend.
The Gordie Howe hat trick consists
Brilliant.
of a goal, an assist, and a fight.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right.
Because producer coach is trying to tell me that it consisted of drinking a beer, beating somebody up, and getting a goal. But
Yeah, I don't know why he brings beer. Maybe it has to do with his cocaine addiction.
maybe it does. Maybe it does.
And Gordie Howe is also known for throwing some elbows.
Some vicious
in
elbows.
his heyday. So you got the Gordie Howe hat trick. If nobody's mentioned this before, but if you got a Gordie Howe 4-goal night, I guess you could. You've got those three that you mentioned. Throw an elbow in there.
Here's a little trivia question for you guys. Can you tell me how old Gordie Howe was when he finally retired? He was playing for the Hartford Whalers.
He was
Was
52.
he 50? Okay.
52?
52.
I thought it was 51, but 52. Wow.
It was that season. He started the season as 51, ended at 52.
In his 50s.
In his 50s. Everyone talks about the longevity of players like Chris Chelios and Jaromir Jagr, and last year Jagr scored 67 goals as a 41-year-old, which was...
67 points.
67.
Points.
Did I say goals?
You said goals, yeah.
Oh, I blew it. So I'm not going to get any fan mail from Jordan to
Don't worry,
this week.
No more fan mail for this week.
That makes all three of
No.
us that have blown it so far. So
All right,
and
perfect.
now we're all on a level playing field
All
here.
right.
We're on quite a pace here.
Yeah, but last year Jagr had 67 points
Oh,
as a
You all right?
41-year-old.
Yeah, I'm good. Sorry.
You know what Gordie Howe did when he was 41?
How many points?
103
You're kidding me.
as a 41-year-old.
That is amazing.
And even more amazing than that, after that season when he was 41, for 2 more times after that, he broke 100 points.
That is incredible, actually.
Phenomenal. Gordie Howe.
And they said that before the stroke, he was still in really good shape. Walked like a mile a day.
Wow.
I think even jogged sometimes. This is somebody who's in his mid to late 80s.
He's 86.
86 years
Yeah.
old. So full recovery. Let's hope.
All
Gordie
right,
Howe,
Gordie Howe.
hockey legend.
Arguably the greatest Red Wing of all time.
One of the greats of all time of any team. History of the NHL.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So Ryan Ellis, I think you wanted to get
I
to a
wanted
little
to
bit.
talk a little bit about Ryan Ellis. All of our listeners out there know that the Nashville Predators produce fantastic defensemen, and everybody talks about Shea Weber and now,
Ryan Suter used to play for the Predators as well.
of course, and now they've got Seth Jones,
Yeah.
the youngster there. There's not a lot of talk about Ryan Ellis. Now, I've been following his career for quite some time now. And he was drafted in 2009 by the Preds, 11th overall. And from that point, well, I mean, he dominated at every level that he played. But after he was drafted, playing for the Windsor Spitfires, in the 2010-2011 season, and of course he's a defenseman, in 58 games, he got 101 points
Wow.
as a defenseman.
Those are Carlson-esque numbers right there.
Connor McDavid hasn't scored 100 points in the OHL yet. He will this season. But anyways, that's not my point. So he's an exceptionally gifted, offensively gifted defenseman. And as we know, Nashville really likes to play very well defensively. So for the first few seasons that he's been with the team, they've wanted him to focus on actually playing defense.
Defensive responsibility.
He's
Yeah.
not a big guy. He's 5'10", 198 pounds, I think.
Okay.
Unless he's had a burger today, in which case he'd be 199. But so for the past few years, they've had him try to focus on his defensive abilities.
Round out his game, yeah.
Exactly. And so he hasn't been getting great minutes. He was on the third pairing for most of his time there. Last year, he averaged 16 minutes a game.
Okay.
This year, they've bumped him up to the second pairing. Last week, he on Tuesday, I can't recall who they played against. It may have been Washington, but he scored a goal and 2 assists, including the game. Actually, that was tied at the end of the regulation and overtime. So he had a goal and 2 assists, and he actually scored the shootout winner. The next game he played, he got an assist on the game-winning goal.
So as a fantasy owner, should I pick up Ryan Ellis?
For all you poolies out there, Ryan Ellis, if you don't have one, get one.
Okay, because would you compare him to Damon Severson? Because that's my big.
No,
that's the acquisition that I take a lot of pride in.
I would not
for the New
compare
Jersey
him
Devils,
to
the rookie defenseman.
Severson. And the reason why is because Severson, I think, has kind of surprised people with his prowess. I think it's expected of Ryan Ellis to be able to to put up those kind of points. And he's even, like right now, he's got 5 points in 8 games.
Right.
So it's early on in the season.
Plus 2.
But that's projecting a 50-point pace. But I think that's something that he's capable of maintaining. Severson, however he is, I don't think he can maintain that pace.
Don't think he can maintain.
No.
And the other thing with Ellis, with the new coach now, they're not so much a defensive team.
Laviolette, that's
yeah.
right. Peter Laviolette, they are up-tempo now.
So maybe they're going to expect him to take more of an offensive role now. Is he getting lots of power play minutes? I haven't followed Nashville too closely.
He's on the second unit, so he is getting power play time. And it was Barry Trotz, too bad Connor's not here to chuckle a little bit, but Barry Trotz, the defensive-minded coach, of course, he was making sure that Ellis kind of
limited, sort of mitigating his ice time. I think out of all of the teams so far this year, Nashville has maybe been the most surprising, and a completely different style for them, like you say, under Laviolette. Colt, more up-tempo. I don't think a lot of people would have expected Philip Forsberg to be leading the team in scoring at this point, but he's another young guy that's really emerging for them. Nashville looks surprisingly dangerous, and when you consider the fact that Pekka Rinne is back on point now, thinking of their defense, last year was pretty much Shea Weber, and no one really else stood out. Now you got guys like Josie and, of course, Ryan Ellis that you're talking about here that's coming along. They could be for real. We could be seeing Nashville in the still playing in May.
They look good.
Definitely a potential postseason contender.
Completely.
Only one regulation loss.
That's right.
In the season so far.
That's right, and beat Chicago as well. So,
and
so
they
look good doing
they
it.
even beat Ottawa, so they're really good.
Oh well, let's award them the cup right now then.
They're fantastic.
Do we even need to play a regular season? I mean,
yeah.
Let's give that cup to Nashville. Let Elvis sing about it, who's still alive down there. How about some Canadian teams that have been surprising? Like Edmonton is coming around now. They've won 4 in a row. Calgary losing a shootout last night to Montreal, but they're above 500. Vancouver and Ottawa we talked about. Out of those 4 teams, who do you think has the best staying power?
Montreal. I'd say Montreal's got the best staying.
So
you haven't mentioned Montreal in those.
We're kind of putting tack on
Montreal's
the
not really a
I think
surprise,
Montreal being tied for the league is a surprise in itself.
It is.
But okay, for the other teams?
Yeah, so we're kind of putting you on the spot here. We didn't inform you that we were going to include you in this portion of the pod. The Ellis thing kind of summed up quicker than we expected. But what we basically had for our next thing was Edmonton, Calgary. Edmonton's more recent improvement. I mean, 2 weeks ago we wouldn't have even been talking about them. But Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, and Ottawa are 4 Canadian teams that look like they might squeak into the playoffs if they continue playing well.
That's right. Nobody predicted that they would be contending for the postseason. Exactly. Now they all look like they have that potential. Who do you think has the best shot of getting
pretty
there?
much any Canadian team out of those 4, which do you think is most likely to actually make the playoffs?
I think it's the Canucks. Hey, way to go.
Oh, look at this.
I think it's the Canucks.
We should make you a weekly segment, I think.
Sure. Hey,
let's have you on this podcast every week.
That top line of the Sedin triplets, I like to call them. Throw Verbata in there.
The SS Verbata, I like to call them.
That's fine. Call them what you will. But they've displayed incredible chemistry. They are dynamite. And Ryan Miller has also been doing pretty well himself. But what I've been most impressed with that team, so they lost Kessler. A lot of people thought they would regress. Benino has fit in very well on
that second line has been producing. And so you can't accuse Vancouver of being a one-line team. Benino, Burrows, and Chris Higgins. They've been a really nice second line. And Burrows seems to really have warmed up to Willie Desjardins, the new coach, because I have seen a real difference in his play. Burrows didn't seem very motivated last year for whatever reason. If you talk to players on the Canucks, they seem to a man say, no, it wasn't Tortorella, it was us. But I don't think there was a lot of a love for Tortorella, and his system that he tried to implement with that team just didn't seem to be the right fit.
There wasn't a lot of love for that GM either.
But no, not at all.
No.
And so
just management overall just was didn't seem to be making the right decisions or making the right moves.
So there seems to be a lot of belief there amongst the players, and now you see Burrows driving the net, playing physical. He's a real force out there now. So that second line has been big. What do you think of Ottawa? Do you think Ottawa has what it takes to continue?
Or are we looking to the Ottawa fan now?
That's right.
If I had to have picked any two of the teams, I would have gone with Vancouver and Ottawa out of these four. I think Edmonton, there's still a lot of question marks there. Can they sustain what they've been doing? I mean, they started off terrible again. They've gone on a 4-game winning streak, which is showing a lot of promise. I'd like to see them continue playing well for a while longer before I start considering them part of the playoff conversation. Same with Calgary. They sort of did the same thing last year where they started off really hot, looked like a contender, and then regressed to, I think, second last in the West. The only team worse was Edmonton. So I'd like to see a little more long-term production from those two teams before I consider them part of the conversation. But yeah, I think Ottawa can definitely be part of the discussion. The one concern I have with Ottawa is their puck possession is still among the league worst. They're down there with Colorado, similar stats to Colorado in Corsi percentage and just puck possession in general. So again, last night they beat Columbus 5-2, outshot again. They pretty well get outshot every game, and it's very difficult to sustain that. I know Leonard played really well, only let in 2 goals and pulled off the win. I'd like to see Ottawa improve their Corsi stats, their puck possession. I think that's the only thing that might hold them back as being a real postseason team, because they do have a lot more depth this year than they did in years past. They don't have Jason Spezza, that everybody expects to be the big hero and get all these points and goals. And
Bobby Ryan, though, has been pretty good for them, I think.
The top line they have right now is the line they should have been depending on last year a lot more. And they kind of realized it a little too late in the season that was their number one unit.
And also Ryan wasn't 100% last year. Let's face it, he had that sports hernia. So
wasn't 100%. That line's great. They've got Chiasson. They're calling him. I always thought it was Chiasson, but apparently it's actually pronounced Chiasson. Alex Chiasson. He's really fitting in well on that Zibanejad line, the second line, and they've bumped McCulloch up to play with those guys.
Right, which I think makes a lot of sense. They had McCulloch on the fourth line there for a little while, and we both agreed that was either not a long-term solution, and if so, then it was a mistake to park him down there, but now he's up on the second line.
Yeah,
so.
I think it was almost McLean sending him a message. He didn't play so well last year. They just want to send the message that he's not entitled to the top 6. He has to earn a spot there, and he still played really well on the second power play unit and put some points up for them. So after that, they did move him up to the top 6, and they've got that Chris Neal line playing pretty well. Mike Hoffman, Chris Neal, and the third guy's escaping me right now.
Neal had the
Legwand. It's the Legwand line, and that's a pretty good third line.
Chris Neal is tied for the lead in plus-minus with Ottawa right now with one Cody Ceci, so at +4. So there you go.
It's good to see that more than just it's good to see that more than just the Turris line is actually going positive this year in the plus-minus aspect.
And the team's got a lot of depth, like you were saying, and they're young, so they look really good years down the road.
And the big thing for Ottawa, too.
And even not down the road, like this year, I think they are a realistic contender to not... I wouldn't say they're a contender to win the conference by any means, but they could sneak in, like 6th to 8th kind of seed. I could still see them missing the postseason pretty easily. Again, I'd like to see them improve their puck possession a bit, but I think they definitely have lots of potential, especially with Karlsson leading the charge on the back end.
Here's 3 things that I think about with Ottawa. 1, the big question coming into this year, what would the goaltending be like? Because Anderson had an off year this year, and so far their goaltending has been absolutely solid. So as long as Anderson continues to play this way, and Leonard continues to play this way, they absolutely have a chance to get into the postseason. That's not even a question. If your goaltenders play that well, where their save percentage is around 93, 94, and that's what Anderson was in 2013. So if he hits that level again, Ottawa can certainly get there. Number 2, Paul McLean. What's your take on the Walrus?
Paul Riss, I think, is a good coach. Good old Nova Scotia boy. The thing with him, I think, he's got a lot of criticism from some people in Ottawa who don't think he's a good fit for the young players. I would have to disagree. I think he's worked wonders for that team. The year they made the playoffs in 2012-13, they didn't have a good team. They faced a lot of injury troubles. Their team was subpar. They still made the playoffs, beat the Habs in round 1, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to the system Paul McLean gets them to play under, because they find themselves in a lot of close games. That's how they got the name the Pesky Sens. They just hang around and then beat you in overtime, or even if they lose in overtime, they hang around for that point. And that's kind of what they need to stick to if they want to be a contending team.
Well,
They don't have the huge firepower that you'd see in Pittsburgh or a team like that. They have to stick to the system, and they've been doing a good job of doing that this year.
And here you have this new team, which was the third thing I was going to mention, because they did undergo significant personnel changes in the off season. So now Spets is gone, like you say, and here comes this Chia Pet or Chia Song. Chia Song, of course. So some alterations there, and maybe that takes a little while to come together sometimes. Perhaps that accounts for why their puck possession has been not where they want it. But I would agree with you. I think they have the potential to stay there if the goaltending remains solid.
Yeah, goaltending is absolutely a big part of it.
Completely. Edmonton, don't think that they have. You want to see a little bit more from the Oilers. Tack, what do you think?
I think they're still a little too young. Don't have a winning pedigree yet, so they're not used to winning. The guys, the Taylor Halls, the Eberleys, the Nugent Hopkins, they've got a lot of talent, but I don't think they have the drive yet to actually be above a 500 team.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that, because one player that has really impressed me a lot in the games that I've watched Edmonton of late during the 4-game win streak is Nugent Hopkins. He, to me, seems like a different player. And it's easy to forget that guy is only 21 years old. And that was the age that Sagan was at when he really exploded last year. I'm seeing a lot of compete out of Nugent.
Well, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got something to prove. And that's translating to him getting points on the ice. But he's a small guy. He can't muck it up in the corners. He's physically dominated. And I really just don't think that he's got that know how to win yet. He doesn't have that know-how. Neither do a lot of the youngsters there. Yakupov, I don't see any kind of grit in him. But anyways, we'll still talk about that top line. Like I was saying, I don't see them being able to sustain what they've done. I think this year they're probably going to be close to 500. I would say a little bit less. But hopefully next year we'll see them take that next step and get closer to playoff contention.
So you don't think the 4-game winning streak is a sign of things to come, but more like an anomaly? Colton, what do you think?
I'm kind of on the fence. I can't see them making the playoffs either. I'd also put them right around 500, maybe a bit less. I don't think it has anything to do with Nugent Hopkins, though. I think he's a good fit for those guys that he's playing with. Hall's a bit of a bigger presence than Nugent Hopkins. He obviously does lack a bit of physical presence on the ice, as he demonstrated by getting into his first career fight and getting injured.
But at least he fought, which I think you have to look at as maybe a step forward.
That's also maybe he shouldn't be doing that. Maybe he should know that he can't get involved in that type of game, because if he's going to be getting injured playing physically, he shouldn't be doing it. It's just going to hurt his team in the long run.
And he is very injury prone. Him having to fight there and getting injured was I think it was obvious that there was a good chance of that happening. Sort of like when who was that goaltender for the Islanders that we all forget about and don't want to talk about? DiPietro. He got into a fight when they were playing against the Penguins. That guy, he was injured for more games than he played, and he goes out and he tries to get into a goalie fight, gets knocked down, and he's out for months.
Yeah, and then he was on suicide watch there for a while after he got cut by the Islanders. So that weird tweet that he sent out. Anyways, the Oilers, one thing I think you could say about them is they're not just a one-line team either, though. They've got David Perron and Purcell on the second line, and they're keeping Draisaitl up, so I think they're hoping that he's going to produce a little more as the year goes on. I know he only has 3 points so far, but showing some signs out there on the ice at times looks good, and Yakupov is starting to show some signs of emergence here. He's got 4 points, I think, right now, 5, and seems to be trying a little harder.
I mean, the only issue I see with your point there about the second line is that you use the word hope a lot. They're hoping Draisaitl emerges. They're hoping Yakupov continues to improve.
They're hoping
And,
Scrivens continues to play well.
Like you don't want
Also.
to have to count on your first line being good and then hope everybody else can play with them, because when push comes to shove, Edmonton has two of, I would say their third and fourth line are probably two of the worst in the Western Conference. So they're really going to have to count on that top six. And if the second line with Yakupov and who was it, Perron and Purcell, if they don't produce, I think Edmonton's doomed to lose a lot of games, just because you can only count on that Hall line so much when every team is going to be keying on that one line. Obviously, you're going to have the Webbers and those kind of guys, the Doughties playing against them. And if they get shut down, Edmonton's going to have some trouble putting the puck in the net.
Right. I mean, contrast Edmonton's situation to that of San Jose. San Jose has 4 players in double-digit scoring right now. Thornton, Couture, Burns, and Marlowe are all double digits, whereas you say with Edmonton, they are very reliant on that first line, and if they hope that second line doesn't come through, and if it doesn't, and if Scrivens can't maintain his torrid pace that he's been on these last few games, then maybe the back to reality losing streak happens.
Yeah,
How about Calgary?
They're not going to be able to keep that pace. No way, no how.
Calgary's got very minimal depth. Not even depth. They don't have a true number one scoring unit.
Well, Giordano and TJ Brody, who admittedly are great defensemen, especially Giordano, they lead
Very
the
good.
team in scoring right now.
Yeah, and when your number one center is Sean Monahan, who hasn't proven himself as a number two center yet, let alone a number one, like they're finding ways to win, and good for them. Like they're a tough team to play. It's a tough rink to play in. The fans are good there. The team plays well as a unit. But over the long term, you need to have guys you can count on to play well in the big moments, and they don't really have that line they can go to score for them.
But good for them for signing Hiller, though.
And that's been big
he's
for
made
them.
a big difference
A
so far.
huge difference, and
Yeah.
he's playing well right now.
He is for sure, but I don't think Hiller alone will be able to carry the team. And okay, so you talked about Giordano and Brody, they're doing well, but by and large, the team doesn't have a lot of firepower, and they're going to have to count on Hiller to win them a lot of games.
That's right.
And so I don't put that much weight on Hiller. Good goalie, very good goalie, but I don't think he can carry the team for the whole season.
They just lost Mason Raymond as well to a shoulder injury. He's week to week now, and he had 7 points in 10 games, which relative to Calgary is a lot. So that maybe hurts them a little bit as well.
Yeah.
I love watching that Johnny Goodrow. He's so much fun
Fantastic.
to watch.
He looks
Magic
good.
hands. Yeah.
Great young player.
Yeah. I know I'm going to be shown the door very shortly, but did anyone, I'm assuming I would be, we were on time constraints, are we not?
We are. We've got about 10 minutes to wrap this pod up, and I haven't seen
We get
Slick
Slick
come over.
right too.
We're supposed to have Slick coming on, but
Okay.
Where's Slick?
I saw him walk by and give me a little grin about 8 minutes ago, but didn't come over. So
All right, well, if we're killing time, has anybody here on the podcast today talked about Connor McDavid and his practice yesterday?
And he made the puck explode.
Made the
That
puck-
was going to be my
Boom.
top. That was going to be my top cheddar. Tack. Thanks for ruining it.
so there's
All right.
also you blew it. It was Dak that blew it
Well, yeah, I
by
definitely
by
blew it.
revealing your top cheddar.
But you know, another thing is that as guests, we're not privy to any of the, you know, the
Fair
the talk about
Fair
what's going to
point.
be
Fair
happening.
point.
Yeah, there's a
the
lot of-
season
against,
schedule
yeah.
or
A
anything
lot,
like that.
hours and hours of extensive inside research that goes on with me and Boudreezy here. So
Yeah.
I'd understand that we really can't brief you on all of this massive research and discussion we put into prior to the show.
You would not believe
So-
how much research. I
Oh.
took time out of my my web porn searching last night just so that I could find out that Yori Laterra has 6 points now.
and
He's now a viable
probably-
fantasy sleeper from St.
Thanks to
Louis.
Tarasenko.
I spent about 3 minutes out of my shift this morning figuring out what I was going to say for top cheddar. So that's pretty well the extent of my research this week.
Yeah, that was crazy. Made the puck explode. So
Yeah.
in practice, he rifles a slap shot, hits the crossbar, and it breaks into 8 pieces.
Yeah, I've only heard 3 times in professional hockey of a puck actually breaking.
Was one of them Gordie Howe?
No, one of them's not Gordie Howe. One of them, actually, there were 2 in-game scenarios. I know yesterday's was just practice. You talking practice? No, so that was just practice. But there was a game in a Swiss league where the puck actually broke in half, and half of the puck went in the net, and the other half didn't.
Wow,
But
did it count as a
Actually,
goal?
this is leading into the second or the other time that it happened, which was back in the 60s. and I believe it was George Armstrong. He was playing for the Leafs at the time, and took a shot. Puck split in half. Half of it went into the net. The other half didn't go into the net. So back in those days, they didn't have the whole rule where the puck entirely has to cross over the line.
Right. Okay.
And so they actually counted that as half a goal. And so the Leafs, believe it or not, won that game 2.5-2. And
so
it was after
essentially
that
that's a goal. Like if you're getting 0.5 for one.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're only getting 0.5 of a goal. So if the other team, I don't know exactly who it was, who they were playing against, but if the other team happened to score a goal and it was 3 to 2.5,
okay,
it
right.
wouldn't have been a tie, right? The other team would have won.
It's like an over/under.
Yeah, but it was that happening in that game that led to the NHL making that rule that the full puck has to cross the line for it to be a goal.
Tack, you know an awful lot about hockey.
We can almost call it tax facts instead
Tax
of tax
facts.
facts with tack attack.
Hey, and maybe next time I'll talk about the 1940s New York Rangers.
Well,
We don't need to get into that.
we'll save that for another time, perhaps.
Hell yeah.
Tack,
All right,
ladies
so
and
yeah, I
gentlemen.
guess that was tack
Thanks,
attack.
everybody.
A nice long tack attack segment.
All right. And I'll go out and see if I can find Slick.
Yeah, fine,
yeah,
Slick.
see, I just sent him a text. I don't know if I think we might have taken out of his break time and now he's not available. But just see if you can get him to come in.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Tack.
Thanks, guys.
Pleasure having you again. That was yet another segment of Tack Attack here
That was
on
informative.
the Weekly Puck Off. If you'd like to hear more of that, you can follow us on Twitter at Weekly Puck Off. Send any listener emails to weeklypuckoff@gmail.com. And still not on iTunes, but
Soon enough.
it'll be soon. It'll be soon. Check us out on YouTube. The Weekly Puck Off is our channel.
If Connor can ever overcome his crack addiction, his addiction to crack, I think we'll be up on iTunes.
Yeah, see, here's the thing with producer Connor. He really doesn't produce anything, so we haven't missed him at all on this podcast. But who we have missed
But
dearly...
he's responsible for a lot of censoring.
We're running 15 minutes behind schedule, but we've missed Cody. He's in here for the first ever episode of Slick's Picks. Technically, it's the second episode of it, but that's the episode we forgot to plug the mic in. So I'm just going to excuse the audio here. I'm just going to turn the mic towards
Cody,
Slick.
can we call him a professional gambler? Are we safe in calling you a professional gambler, or do you prefer hobbyist?
I don't know. I gamble. Let's just put it that way.
So Cody's our expert gambler in the office, and what we're basically going to do, we're going to try to feature him once a week on what we're going to call Slick's Picks. Slick is sort of his nickname that he's earned in the office.
He's got to regale us with some hot gambling tips for those of you that like to play a little pro line.
This is Pro Line Picks, and he's going to analyze the picks for the upcoming week, the teams for the upcoming week, pick the teams that he thinks will have fairly decent odds to pay out and still win, I guess is the take that I have on it.
So I guess I should probably wrap this up quickly. It sounds like you guys are
We've got
running a little bit behind schedule.
We've got 10 minutes to finish the entire pod, so we'll give you like 3 minutes. No,
I don't need 3 minutes, but I
6
do
minutes.
have, I do have a nice play that I saw for Saturday. I think it's about time Carolina gets their first win of the year.
Oh, yeah?
Gotta win eventually.
Who are they playing?
Arizona.
Ooh.
Okay, I don't mind that pick. And
Arizona winless on the road.
They're on the
Very
road?
underwhelming. I don't know.
I
who
love
Carolina,
that pick
I don't know
because
who
they got
Carolina's
Stahl
starting,
back
but-
now.
Exactly. I don't know who Carolina's starting. I don't think it really matters, but
Yeah, they're both equally dismal.
Well, Cam Ward has not been good. I think Kadobin's maybe marginally better, but yeah, as long as I would be more comfortable if it were me wagering on that particular contest if it was Kadobin in goal, because
I'd have
Ward
to
has just
agree.
been horrible.
Ward's extremely shaky. He's most overpaid athlete in the league. Now that I know he makes...
Ooh.
Well, we just established last week he
What's
makes
his
6
salary?
mil. He
6
makes.
million.
They signed him a few years ago when he was still relevant, and they've got him locked up for $6 million a year until 2016.
That's $6 million Carolina's never getting back.
Yeah. Anyway, so we've got Carolina on Saturday. Is your other pick also a Saturday?
Well,
So
now are they on the road or are they home for that
I'm
one,
just,
Cody?
I'm just gonna stick with the one pick this week. I
The-
like the Carolina Hurricanes. No, they're
Slick's
at home.
pick.
I would not go with them on the road. Figure.
Okay, well, probably some decent odds you would get there on Pro Line if you pick them to beat
Carolina has
Arizona. I
yet to
like
be
that.
a favorite yet this season, and I doubt they will be on Saturday, but it'll be close. It'll be pretty much
Yeah.
the same odds for both.
Cody, do you have any gambling-related stories that you want to mention to us here just quickly? Any experiences that the listeners might find interesting?
I've got quite a few stories. I
What's
don't
one
know
you'd
if
like to share with us?
I don't know if actually Colton may have met my friend Sam at one point.
Yes, actually.
But Sam, oh that guy! I got a million Sam stories. I could give you any one of those you wanted, but I can think of a particularly good one. Sam likes to drink and when he drinks, he tends to gamble beyond his means. And I remember, because I was involved, this is why I remember this so vividly. It was 2013, March Madness, Gonzaga, Wichita State. Every single one of us had a tie in the game, which on Pro Line has to be within 5 points. Long story short, it was a tight game the whole way. Wichita ends up winning by 6. Sam had like an $800 ticket that he had already taken to the bank.
$800?
Yeah, like there was $1,500 worth of tickets to be won if this game tied. Sam had an $800 ticket.
Oh, so he could win $800.
It was the last game for all
he
of us.
didn't put down.
Because this is like an 11:30 game.
I thought you meant he ran a $25 ticket enough times that he spent $800 on the game.
No, he had like a 5-game. Anyway, so we were all poised to win off this game, and we had been talking about going to the casino. So Sam had just gotten paid this day. He goes to the casino, loses several $100s at blackjack, and clearly had drained his checking account once again on payday.
Once again. This is a regular occurrence.
This is not the first time it happened.
Has Sam checked himself into Gamblers Anonymous yet?
But his saving grace was he had an $120 winning Pro Line ticket from earlier that day in his wallet. We all knew he had no money left, but lo and behold, 20 minutes later, Sam shows back up at the roulette table with the bunny ears, as we call them. It's the gambling, like, you can tell someone's been losing money. They have the bunny ears. And
wait a minute, what are the bunny ears? Just your head is droopy?
It's just droopy, everything's you're just a little bit.
You're sagging.
You're a little bit
droopier
than normal.
He literally sprouts furry ears out of the side of his face and just goes into the blackjack table.
And so anyway, he buys in for I think $90 it was. But it was definitely less than 100, close to 100 though, and proceeds to lose that, very uneventfully over the next 20 minutes. And months later, we finally get it out of him how he got this money. He ended up selling his Pro Line ticket out front to a fellow cigarette smoker.
Oh my God!
For $90, so he had to take a loss on it.
He took a $30 hit on his one win of the day. His one win of the day,
and he had to still wait 15 days to have any more money.
Let that be a warning to you at home. Gambling can lead to sometimes problems. That's quite a story, Cody.
Yeah, I should have used a fake name, I guess, but
slick.
We'll just beep it out every time he says the word Sam.
Right.
We'll beep that out too.
Right. We'll take care of that in edit.
Let's just call him waste of air.
Well, that was slick, everybody.
And an invigorating Slick's picks with a
Our
story
very
to
first
boot.
Slick's picks.
I better
Nicely
get back to it though. And let you guys wrap it up here.
All right. Thanks for coming in, Cody. That was Slick's picks, folks, and you heard it here first. Now is the time to pick the upset, Carolina. And while it may not be a guarantee by any means, if they're going to beat a team, it could be the struggling Arizona Coyotes while Carolina's at home. Stahl's back on the ice.
That's right.
Playing with Tlusty, who's been hot, as well as Alex Semin, who's yet to heat up.
Indeed.
Maybe they score a few. Maybe Kudobin manages to stand on his head.
And the law of averages dictates that they have to win eventually, so...
They've got to win at some point, and it's probably going to be against a team like this, or maybe Buffalo. So let's give Slick a round of applause for his appearance this week.
Nicely done, Slick.
All right, we should probably wrap things up here. We've got about 5 minutes left.
Okay, well, let's quickly mention here that Mike Camilleri's jaw is not broken, so he should be back soon. Bobrovsky out for 1 to 2 weeks. That is...
Yeah, I hear his girlfriend has an iron vagina.
Oh, no.
He fractured his finger, did he not?
Yeah, he did.
I think that might be how it happened.
Iron vagina.
I thought I'd throw that in there since Connor's not here. I'm sure he would have said something about it. So Bobrovsky with the broken
He must have been in
finger.
He must have been in Dartmouth then.
Oh, wow.
But Foligno's coming back soon. Luckily, he only received a stinger when he collided with a linesman on Sunday. He got carted off on a stretcher. He should be fine, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Franzen coming back soon. He's out for another week. I don't think he'll be back this weekend. Johan Franzen with a groin injury. Martin Havlat received 55 stitches in his face when he took a hit from Jason Chimera a couple of weeks ago. He's now on IR. He's day-to-day. He looks like he's ready for Halloween. He looks like a bit of a, I don't know what you would call it, ghoul, zombie, whatever.
Yeah.
Gaborik is still back, and not back, but out. UBI, upper body injury, should be back soon. I don't know. I hear he's working on his Halloween costume. He's dressing up as a Slovakian diva this year.
He plays the part pretty well.
He does. Speaking of Halloween costumes, any Halloween stories you want to share? Because I have one. I don't know if we have time to get to
I
it.
think we better save it for next week as a post-Halloween celebration because we've got only a few minutes to wrap this thing up.
Halloween segment. Voinov's wife is not pressing charges, so that's big. Evander Kane has started skating for the Winnipeg Jets.
Voinov's wife is not pressing charges, but Varlamov's girlfriend is.
That's right. Lawsuit. Varlamov.
We'll keep you tuned on that next week. There's still not a whole lot of information about it. I'm sure you'll hear about it in the news before we do, but we will reiterate it just in case you don't pay attention to anything.
Indeed we will.
So should we quickly get to Top Cheddar and You Blew It just before we sum things up here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so all right, you kick us off with your You Blew It.
Okay, well, my You Blew It for this week would have to go to, well, I had two. So I went with the New Jersey Devils and their pathetic penalty killing so far this season. 66.7%, not very good. They're last in the league. And last night when they got lit up 8-3 by Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh was 3 for 7 on the power play. Then I also set Buffalo with 10 shots on goal last night. Sabres are so bad that their leading scorer is Drew Stafford, who has 4 points in 10 games.
Yeah, and that is certainly not very good. Sorry, I kind of tuned out there. I was trying to get the speaker set up for our exciting outro music. So I don't really have much to say about your stuff because I wasn't listening. But I'm sure
Nobody else was anyways. It's okay.
You already told me about what it was going to be before the pod started, so I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay.
Okay, so for my You Blew It, I'm going to go with New Jersey. I hope you didn't change your mind and go with New Jersey, did you?
I just said New Jersey.
New Jersey, okay. Then I'm going to go with...
But I cheated. I said 2.
Oh, so you said both. See, I thought you were
Yeah.
going with Buffalo, and I was going to say New Jersey.
Well, that was a miscommunication.
Well, you know what? Here's my You Blew It. It's my lack of attention skills on this podcast.
Don't be so hard at you. John Scott.
Well,
You can say
we
John
already
Scott.
had 2 You Blew It's. We'll just say Boudreaux took mine.
Okay.
All right, fine. John Scott. Whatever. So for Top Cheddar...
John Moore, I meant to say, is about to get suspended for the Rangers. That's what I meant to say. I blew
Oh
it.
my! There's another. Okay,
Let's get out
we're
of here.
fully You Blew It. Okay, we're just gonna get into Top Cheddar here. My Top Cheddar, I couldn't really come up with anything too extravagant from the NHL. So what I decided to go with, the real reason producer Connor isn't here today is not because he's a crack addict. That was a joke, just in case you thought we were serious for some reason.
It was?
He's at the gym.
Get out.
Coach Connor going to the gym. This is like breaking news. I mean, it's almost more relevant for like office emails than his haircut.
What does he bench? We should ask him what he benches.
Oh,
I'll bet you it's at least 100 pounds.
that might be pushing it.
80?
He's just getting back into the gym now. So when I say getting back into the gym,
70.
getting into the gym.
Well, let's hear it for
I don't
Coach.
know. Yeah, good job. And you know what? As much flack as we give him for not producing anything on this podcast yet still earning the title of producer, hats off for going to the gym and improving your personal health. He may have failed for the 300th time to quit smoking, but at least he's getting physically active.
Absolutely. And he's going to need the mental dexterity that one can acquire in the gym for next week when we bring in some sound bites, right? And he's going to have to start doing some soundboarding. So
yeah,
look forward to that. My top cheddar was Seth Griffin of Boston Bruins, who was on their top line. Nobody had ever heard of him. He had 3 points last night in, albeit a 4-3 loss to Minnesota. Second goal he scores, he flies across the goal mouth. Kind of like Bobby Orr when he scored the Cup winner back in 1970 against St. Louis. So good outing for Seth Griffin.
Bobby.
Maybe he'll stay on the top line for a little while longer. Lucic and Krejci.
Big claps, big claps.
Yeah.
Oh, no. See, I really thought I had it down this week. It says I'm linked.
Bluetooth not working on the speaker? Well,
No, we've got it going here. Just there it is. All right, folks. Thank you yet again for tuning into another exciting episode of the Weekly Puck Off.
thanks everybody.
This was episode 5. Thanks again to Jordan for sending in emails. We encourage all of you listeners to send us emails at weeklypuckoff@gmail.com, and we will address all of the questions because we usually don't get any. So 1 to 2 would be lovely.
We'll be on iTunes soon.
iTunes will happen at some point. In the meantime, check us out on YouTube. The Weekly Puck Off is our channel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe on there, and follow us on Twitter at Weekly Puck Off. We
right.
still haven't sent out a tweet on Twitter, but we're looking for a few followers. Anyhow.
That's coming up in the week ahead here as well.
Indeed. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you. Puck off!